Okay. Chapters 7 and 8 we combine into one chapter. We just do 2 sections from each chapter, so it's pretty short. And we're going to start with 7.1 today. 7.1 and 7.2 you're going to find are very similar to each other. So if you're okay with what we do today, you should be all right when you come back from spring break and do section 2. I've got a couple of examples of 7.1, but before we do that, I want to share a formula that's it's in your book, it's in your textbook, so you can take a look at it there if you want. But it will basically set up how we're going to do these problems here in section 1. Section 1, we're talking about credit cards. And when you use a credit card, basically you're borrowing someone else's money when you use a credit card, and then you're expected to pay that money back. And that's what we're going to be doing here in section 1. So this formula I'm going to give you is on page 258 of your book. And here's the formula. It's fairly simple. They're going to ask us to find your new balance on your credit card. New balance is the amount of money that you owe on the credit card currently. And to find your new balance, we're just going to put some things together here. We're going to start with the previous balance. Previous balance is any money you have left over that you didn't pay back from the previous month. We're going to subtract from that any payments you make. Because if you make a payment to your credit card, that's money you're paying back to the credit card. That's going to come off of the amount that you owe. We're going to add to that any finance charges we have. Finance charge is just a fancy word for interest. When you borrow money on your credit card, if you don't pay it back within the next month, they start to charge you interest. That interest is called the finance charge. And then the last thing we do, and this becomes important when we get to section 2, the last thing we do is we add on any new purchases you make for the current month of your credit card. And that's really all there is to it. So let's show you some examples of how this works. And we'll just go right back to this formula when we do this. We have Bob. Bob's charge card had a previous monthly balance of $144.79. He made a payment of $144.79. He has no finance charge. And this month, Bob makes no new purchases. So it wants to know his new balance. So if you go back to find our new balance, we're going to start with the previous balance, which it said here his previous balance was $144.79. We're going to subtract from that any payments he made. He made a payment of $144.79. When you subtract those two, he's at 0. He owes his credit card nothing at this point. Now, because he owes them nothing, they're not going to charge him interest. So he has no finance charge. And he also makes no new purchases, so we don't have to add on either of those two. So in the end, his new balance would be $0. He owes the credit card company nothing at this point. Now, that's not very typical. Most people carry a balance on their credit card. So let's give you a more typical example. I'm going to go to Andre here. Andre's charge card account has a previous balance of $450.95. He made a $160 payment. He made new purchases of $39.95. And he had a finance charge of $675. Again, it asks us to find his new balance. So I'm going to go back to our formula. For the new balance, we're going to start with his previous balance. His previous balance was $450.95. We're going to subtract from the previous balance any payments he made. He made a $160 payment. When we subtract those two, we're going to be at $290.95. After we subtract his payments, we're going to add the finance charge. His finance charge was $6.75. Add those up, we're going to get $297.70. And then the last thing we have to do is add on his new purchases. This month, his new purchases were $39.95. When we add that on there, we're going to get $337.65. This amount at the end, that's the amount he now owes on his credit card, which is what we call the new balance. And that's all there is to it. So for today, what we want you to do is get through quiz 7-1. And like always, when you finish that, take a picture of it, email it to me, and I'll get it put into the grade book.